Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at compositions of transformations that involve rotations. So remember, a composition is just a combination of two or more transformations. In this video we're going to be doing compositions that involve rotations. The reason I want to take a look at this is because order is important when we're doing compositions. So we're going to take a look at an example. We're going to graph an object and its image after a composition transformation, and then we're going to do that same composition but in a different order. And we're going to take a look at the results and see why the order is important. So the example I want to take a look at, I want to graph this segment RS with the endpoints R is 1, -3 and S is 4, -6. So let's just start by graphing that right away. So R is 1, -3, 1, and then down 1, 2, 3. So here's point R. And then S is 4, -6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here's point R, and here's point S, and then connecting those together to create our segment. The composition that I would like to do, we're going to do a reflection in the y-axis, followed by a rotation of 90 degrees about the origin. So we do have some coordinate shortcuts that will help us out with this. So the first shortcut for the reflection, if we have a point A, B, we're reflecting it over the y-axis, so we're reflecting it horizontally. So the y values actually stay the same. The only thing that's going to change is the x value. So it goes from a positive x value to a negative, or vice versa. So instead of AB, after doing our reflection, we'll have -A, positive B. And then for the rotation, the shortcut that we developed for this, the x and the y coordinates, they switch spots, but the first one becomes the opposite. So we have -BA. So what I'd like to do is use these coordinate rules to help us keep track of what's happening to point R and point S. So let me rewrite our two original points for our pre-image. So R is 1, -3, and then S is the point 4, -6. And we're going to start with the reflection. So for R prime, the y value stays the same, but now the x value becomes opposite. So we have -1, -3. And then for S prime, we switch the x values, so we get -4, -6. And why don't we just graph this right away, see if it looks correct so far. So -1, -3, here's R prime. And then S prime, we're going to be -4, -6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So when we're doing a reflection, we know that the line of reflection is the perpendicular bisector between the pre-image and the image. So if we take a look at our points here, they should be the same distance away from the y-axis. So R is 1 unit to the right of the y-axis, R prime is 1 unit to the left. S is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away, and S prime is also 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. So that looks good. So now let's do the rotation. So now we're going to take R prime and S prime, and we're going to rotate those. So right now we're in the third quadrant. And if I rotate this 90 degrees about the origin, we're going to go counterclockwise. So we should end up back in quadrant 4 over here. But with the rotation, the orientation will change a little bit. So let's see what we end up with. So the x's and the y's, they switch spots. And then we switch the sign on that first one. So for R double prime, so it's going to be -3, -1, and then we make the first one the opposite sign. So 3, -1. And then for S double prime, switching the -4 and the -6, we make the first one positive here. So 6, -4. And now let's graph these. So we got 3 and -1 for R double prime. And then for S double prime, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here's S double prime. And connecting these together with a segment, here is our final image. So a rotation, we know that the distance from the origin to the pre-image and the image should stay the same. So one way we can illustrate that is just with a circle. So if I draw a circle that goes through r prime and r double prime, we can see that that distance from the origin does stay the same and it stays unchanged. If I draw in some segments here connecting it to the origin, we should see a 90-degree angle. So from the origin to r prime and from the origin to r double prime, these have opposite reciprocal slopes, so they do have that 90-degree angle between them. So that's the first one. So we did the reflection and then the rotation. Now I want to take the same segment and I want to do this composition in the opposite order. So let's do the same thing, but now we're going to do the rotation first. So let me graph our original segment first, so our pre-image. 1, -1, 2, 3, here's r. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So R and S, and I'll connect those together to form our segment. And now let's do the rotation first. So same idea, let's use our coordinate rules to keep track of what's happening to our points. So R is 1, -3. S, we have 4, -6. For the rotation, so r prime, we switch the x and the y, and then the first one gets the opposite sign. So 3, +1. And now for s prime, we'll end up with 6 and +4. So we're rotating at 90 degrees about the origin. Again, we're going counterclockwise. So our pre-image is in quadrant 4, but after the rotation, we should end up here in quadrant 1. So 1, 2, 3, +1 for r prime. And then 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4 for s prime. And connecting these together to form our segment, we ended up in quadrant 1, which is what we thought would happen. And now let's take that segment, r prime, s prime, and now let's reflect it over the y-axis. So again, to do this reflection, it's going to reflect horizontally, so just the x values get the opposite sign. So -3, +1, and then s double prime is -6, +4. So -1, 2, 3, up 1. Again, we can see here that r prime and r double prime are the same distance away from the y-axis. And then s double prime, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the y-axis ends up being the perpendicular bisector between these points. And now finally connecting these together, we get our final image in this case as well. But comparing this to what we did the first time, when we did the reflection first and then the rotation, we can see that our final image ends up in a different location. In this case, we ended up in the second quadrant. So the order of our composition is important. We can't do it in any order that we want to end up in the same location. So you may have to make sure that you're following the correct order so that we end up with consistent results.